This podcast is brought to you by the friendly people at Crembo Baked Goods, the San Francisco Bay Area's newest parv non-dairy kosher bakery, proudly serving cookies, loaf cakes, and the best gluten-free challah I've ever had, and much more. Ask about their challah delivery service to schools, organizations, and corporations in the Bay Area. Email them at orders@crembobakedgoods.com for more info, or simply go to Crembo, that's Krembo, bakedgoods.com. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Holy Sparks podcast. And without further ado, let me introduce and edify my guest properly. Rabbi Zac is a rabbi and community leader based in Berkeley, California. As the founder and CEO of Shefa, Zac is pioneering a movement to integrate safe and supported psychedelic use into the Jewish spiritual tradition, advocating for the healing of individual and inherited traumas, and inspiring a Jewish religious and creative renaissance in the 21st century. He is a qualified instructor of MBSR and is trained in ketamine-assisted care through Inbodied Life. Rabbi Zac, welcome to the podcast.
Great to see you, my friend.
I've known you for years. We've been family friends for a long time. But for people that aren't familiar with you, tell us just a little bit about your history, where and how you grew up.
I was born and raised in Southern California. We were Californians and then we were Jewish in Orange County. We moved to Greensboro, North Carolina right before high school, and I was dropped into a racial reality, a religious reality in a way that I had never experienced in California, other than just like vague anti-Semitism. And it was there and then when I was 15 and went on a Israel trip for the first time, slightly aimless in high school. I had a profound, overwhelming, non-negotiable, mystical experience and met the one and only. And from that, I think, powerful psychedelic experience, it changed me. It changed the path of my life, my lineage, my heart, and I sought out ways to continue that intimate connection with the divine through Torah and mitzvot, and dedicated my life to Jewish practice and communal life. Fast forward many years, became a rabbi in Israel, moved back to the States, working for places like BBYO, the Jewish Community Center of San Francisco, and was a participant in the 2017 joint study between Johns Hopkins and NYU. And I had my first psychedelic experiences in a research study where I was given 2 major doses of psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, and a life-changing moment yet again. So here I am in the glow of all of these big moments.
I love it. Okay, so just real quick, I'm going to rewind for a second. So you're 15, you're in Israel, and you met the one and only. This was a psychedelic journey, or this was just something else? Because that
This
happened.
was something else. This was a spontaneous mystical experience. I call it psychedelic because it had that mind soul manifesting quality. The catalyst is unclear.
Okay.
Christians call it grace.
Where were you?
I was in Tel Gezer, which is an agricultural settlement outside of Jerusalem. And my teacher was showing us in a tell, it's kind of buried under a heap of dirt and time. And he was showing us the layers of settlement, one on top of the other. And for whatever reason, I don't know, just grace, luck, blessing, um, my mind opened up. I felt kind of like electricity going through my entire body. There was a presence and there was a mission communicated to me. And on our next stop, getting falafel and ice cream on the bus, I bought a kippah. I didn't know what any of this meant, but I just knew that I had to be learning. I had to be practicing. I changed my entire life because of this encounter, and it was amazing and also alienating.
Amazing. Okay, and so if anyone that's not familiar with a tell is like an archaeological site where traditionally there's a city built on top of a city built on top of something else, and so it creates this mound, right? So that is so you've probably heard of Tel Aviv, right? Same concept.
Hmm. Hmm.
So amazing, amazing. Okay, I'd love to hear more about that. I also had a multiple mystical experiences in Israel, and
Mm,
specifically my first one was on top of Masada, where it was 120 in the shade that day. That may have contributed to part of it as well, but I think I don't know if a lot of people have that, but I think it is safe to say a lot of people have mystical experiences in Israel because of, openness, time and space. But what I love is that it immediately translated into action for you. So
yeah.
walk us through the time period between being 15, having that experience, and then deciding to become a rabbi, because you went really quickly and there's a lot of steps along the way. So just
Yeah.
walk us
Geez, there are a lot of steps. I mean, the first thing that I knew is that I had to learn, right? It was so clear that the thing that I needed to do was to be able to have access to our wisdom. And the first book that I got, I keep it somewhere here near me, is the Jewish catalog. Like that was immediately what was available. You know, this 1970s Jewish hippie how-to manual, from everything from keeping kosher, keeping Shabbat, putting on tefillin, making your own tzitzit, even a beautiful essay by Reb Zalman Schechter Shalomi in the back called, it was excerpts from something called The First Step, which was not just about the exoteric how to, but more the internal how be. What's the inner orientation to life of the spirit as a Jew? And it really touched me. So I came back and told my parents, my nice parents, that I couldn't be in a car anymore on Shabbat. I couldn't eat their food. There were things that I couldn't do, and I think that that was kind of the vibe that came across was I have to stop doing all of this stuff. I didn't know even how to communicate my direct experience, so that probably felt a little strange. Also, like you went, you did this thing, now you're a completely different person. It wasn't like I made contact with a Kiruv organization, like outreach organization like Aish or anything else like that, Chabad. It was just like I had an overwhelming experience with what I assume is God, and I have to do this stuff now, and I'm so sorry. Like if I even said that, I was afraid that people would think that I was crazy or worse. So I just said, like, this is what I need to do as a person. But it became clear that Greensboro, North Carolina, as lovely as it was, could not be my last stop. So I looked for a college that would support my desire for learning, and I found myself at the University of Maryland, became a Jewish studies, got my BA in Jewish studies. But there was an Orthodox community, there was a conservative community, even a Reform community that just felt like full of young life and vibrancy. And, so I've had this powerful experience, the desire to be observant, and immediately kind of beautifully confronted with pluralism as a reality. People are going to each other's minions. We're celebrating together. We're, the the Gabbai, the leader of one minion, is getting an Aliyah and another minion. I think the staff held it well, incredibly well. And there was just this kind of like radical openness to each other that felt so good. So, as where I kind of like dabbled in Orthodoxy, I was not raised Orthodox, but I wanted to have aspects of an Orthodox lifestyle. Like I was going to a mikvah every Friday before Shabbat. That there were things about Orthodoxy and Orthodox culture, either because I was Californian or North Carolinian, where I couldn't give myself all the way. Some aspects of like intuition about feminism and gender roles. Um, or I'm not from the Northeast, but it looks like I have to look like I'm from the Northeast or sound like I'm from the Northeast, but that's not me. So finding my own way and kind of learning to appreciate difference without becoming absorbed into another culture. After I graduated, I spent about 3 years at the conservative yeshiva. It was very clear that I wanted to do real, formal, full-time learning. Again, not in an Orthodox environment. And I was just like completely blown away with learning Talmud every day, learning from great academic people who were also invested in lives of meaning. Praying 3 times a day consistently with the same community was an amazing kind of balance between like all of this intellectual rigor and then the openness of the heart and tefillah and music. We had beautiful Rashi Yeshiva, the heads of the yeshiva. And then it was kind of like a question on a lot of people's mind, but certainly mine, like, do I want to become an academic? I love Torah. I especially love Hebrew Bible. Do I want to become a professor like some of these people, or do I want to become a rabbi? I wish I had become a therapist now that I was looking back on it. But
It's rolled up into the job description of being a.
yeah, it's all kind of there. I have lifetimes and lifetimes to figure it out. But um, I actually, that's when I moved to Berkeley. I moved to Berkeley and I met you. I met your brother Mike. I met your dad. And I got a master's in biblical languages here at UC Berkeley in the Graduate Theological Union, Aramaic, Greek, and Hebrew. And my love for text was really engaged. But it was clear to me after that 2 year period that I didn't want to become an academic. I didn't love writing. I love researching. But it was not the lifestyle that I want. Even my advisor was like, "Do you want to end up at Corpus Christi College in Texas as an adjunct professor? This is not the life for you." So I went on and taught Tanakh for a while in Boston, and it just became clear that the rabbinate was my calling. So I ended up in Israel again, more full-time learning. And over time, I got smicha privately. But then coming back, I saw myself as a teacher first, as an educator, and loved working with populations of people who had not traditionally had access to Jewish wisdom, big Jewish questions, like the burning questions of our lives. Um, but over time, I started to feel some kind of like internal decay that I was giving a lot, but not receiving as much of that like light and love of my originary experience as I want in these communities that I was finding myself. And that's also then when I found myself on the couch at Johns Hopkins, and it became abundantly clear that I needed to kind of change the direction of what I was doing.
Wow, I love it. Okay, thanks for filling in all those pieces. This is great. And I love that you mentioned the this pluralistic community that you were in I think it was North Carolina. And I feel like the Bay Area has a lot of that overlap, which
Hmm.
is super
Yeah.
healthy. And it's not everywhere, but it's definitely I feel that here, and that's really sweet, and it's part of our experience here.
Mhm.
So, John Hopkins, what happened after that? Your path changed. Just talk us through that, and then maybe you can talk us through the origin of Shefa.
So yeah, I had these two big experiences at Johns Hopkins. The way that I got involved in the study. So after I got married, we had a number of miscarriages and rounds of IVF, and it felt as though kind of this like hot spiritual life that I had led and felt excited by and proud of, and felt so dear to me. It was like the first real trauma of my adulthood. And it was hard to communicate to other people about what was happening, kind of like a psychedelic experience. Like if you're not inside it, it's hard to know what's actually happening, and I can't really completely express what it's like. Um, and it just felt like every day some aspect of my spirit was being ripped away from me. Just wondering, like, will I ever have the thing that I want most? And that seems to be so easily accessible for so many other people, just like, have a child. Um, so thank God we had our third round of IVF was successful. We have two beautiful kids. And um, but I was really feeling like incredibly low, and also the fact that I was responsible. I was a rabbinic, voice and rabbinic leader in the community that I was working at, and I felt completely uninterested in trying to continue to lead and engage. And so I had read in 2016 a New Yorker article by Michael Pollan called "The Trip Treatment," and just the conversation with him, these researchers about mystical experiences and treatment for depression and other mental health issues just kind of blew me away. Like I grew up with DARE. I don't know if you did also drug resistance education in Southern California, and it absolutely did its job. Like I did not touch any sort of drug other than cannabis. And that's why I actually was enrolled in the study, because you had to be psychedelically naive, meaning having not done psychedelics before. And an interesting tidbit that I like to tell is that the lead researcher who just passed away almost exactly a year ago, Roland Griffiths of blessed memory, he said that he had a hard time finding rabbis who had not done psychedelics before.
That is hilarious.
So I know. So I had my two experiences, really like both beautiful, profound, terrible, amazing, um, and great, like the great poles of spiritual existence. Like the first was all presence, all beauty, all light, all everything. And the second was nothing, void, darkness, shadow, confusion, 16 hours on the couch. And then the integration process. Like if I put these two things together, what does it actually come to? It's like, wow, I've felt the fullness of the spiritual path. There is and there isn't. And this first phase was all about there is, very clearly, isness, yesh, as we call it, somethingness. And now I'm in another phase, ayin, nothingness, empty, questioning, doubt. Here I am. And just being able to see it as a spiritual stance, nonetheless. That's really what I learned. But I came out of these experiences kind of wondering, as a rabbi and communal leader, like, are we actually ready as a community if these things are going to be made more available more often in treatment or even in underground settings for people to have these big, profound experiences within their own consciousness? Is Jewish ritual, Jewish life, Jewish communal work, is it set up for people to be having experiences like this? On the one hand, on the other hand, is the psychedelic world attuned enough to unique Jewish needs, culturally, religiously, spiritually, that actually feed us, that attend to our trauma profiles, as diverse as they are? You want to talk about pluralism? We've got lots of different kinds of trauma. And I felt both lacking. And that's when I decided in 2020 to found Shefa as an organization that was here to support Jews who are working with psychedelic medicines in lots of different ways, lots of different reasons, and to kind of consolidate a conversation that I think has probably already been happening since the 60s with Rabbi Art Green and Reb Zalman Dr. Shalomi. And we've seen 4 years later, like Judaism and psychedelics, it's happening. I'm proud to be part of this cohort of leadership that is elevating the conversation into the public sphere of Jewish and broader religious life.
And how does Shefa integrate or differentiate itself from Inbodied Life?
Embodied Life is a training program by my dear friend Lauren Taus.
Okay.
She's a psychotherapist. She works with ketamine. She trains mental health professionals and also a couple rabbis, like one that you previously had on, the Parrots. Um, and she also brings people to Costa Rica for ayahuasca retreats. She's incredibly talented. She's brilliant. She's wonderful, and deep Jewish soul and deep friend. Um, I think that what we are trying to do with Shefa is we don't have any training programs as of yet. But we know that they're, comparing some data that already exists out there, that there are probably about 1 million adult Jewish people in the US who are currently using psychedelics. But there is not yet, I mean, except for Shefa and some informal ways, often people have a desire after their psychedelic experiences to re-engage with their root traditions, sometimes for the first times. There's a desire to want to learn their ancestral wisdom. But because conversations about psychedelics can have like an illicit tinge, like a tom, like you've done something wrong, a taste of like you're doing something that's not kosher to talk about publicly, it can be difficult for a person then to want to engage in Jewish life, but not say why. And so we're kind of there to fill in the gap. So we have opportunities for people to be learning about expanded consciousness in our traditions. we have these amazing teachers who come and teach various aspects of the tradition that way. We have an integration care team, really talented spiritual caregivers and mental health providers who are there to receive people's psychedelic experiences and help them make meaning out of it with real practical suggestions that are attuned and aligned with their own Jewish practice and their own Jewish self-expression. And we have moved into the ceremony space as well. Just this past year, we've had two ketamine retreats here in Berkeley, California, medically supervised, trauma informed, and Jewishly rooted, an offering that we're calling Shuva, which means to return, returning to self, returning to spirit, returning to community, which has been kind of a model of how we want to think about Jewish psychedelic experience, the way that we bring people into the process, the way that we prepare as a community, the way that we bring in Jewish ritual and Jewish music and Jewish wisdom into the ceremony space itself and also into the integration. How are we using the tools of our tradition to deepen and expand what our experience was like after the fact, in our just everyday consciousness? And it's a work in progress. We've started a lineage. We've got 2 points that makes a line, and we want to see how it works, not only with ketamine, but eventually other medicines that become legal in other contexts. And hopefully, a primary desire of mine is to actually start looking at intergenerational trauma and how these medicines and the communal context can help resolve some of these ancestral wounds.
I love it. Okay, so you kind of jumped ahead and thought to where I was going to go, which was on my last podcast. I interviewed your friend Rabbi Peretz, and we didn't really go into particular details about psychedelics or ketamine or what the overall journey is for a person. And obviously, everyone is different, right? So it's hard to generalize, but perhaps you could walk us through a process. Let's say someone's interested and they want to reach out to you from a person approaching you through the journey, and then what happens? For example, most people, are they just looking for a one-time experience and then whole long integration? Or is it the more of a general trend that they're looking for a series or sequence of experiences? And talk about things like that. It'd be really interesting to hear about.
Cool. Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, everyone is different. But what I have found is that many Jews, especially people that are around our age and older, and probably younger too, um, lots of Jewish people that I encounter would actually really like to try psychedelics, either for self-discovery or for healing some mental health issue. But there is a concern about doing something that is currently federally illegal. And so this question or issue about prohibition makes people inhibited and they probably don't move forward. Because ketamine is legal, it is a controlled substance, but you can get ketamine with a prescription from a mental health provider. Um, that there is promising data and research about how it is able to create neuroplasticity, right, and openness in the mind. Um, and it is a relatively short and safe experience. Usually, in just kind of different dosages create different effects, but let's say a psychedelic dose of ketamine will probably be about an hour-long experience with what's also then called a long tail, where you can feel kind of like the openness or the quiet of the experience afterwards, compared to something like mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, which could be 6 to 8 hours at a high to moderate dose, or ayahuasca, this psychedelic brew that's often associated with indigenous and Amazonian traditions, could be 12 to 14 hours. So it's a relatively short experience. Um, when people come into these retreats so far, we've had a rigorous screening process, both from myself. What are you hoping to get out of this? What is your orientation to your Judaism? Have you done psychedelics before? And what would you like to come out of the experience with? And people are often speaking about intergenerational trauma. People are often, especially in this past year, um, dealing with anxiety and depression that is caused by the war in Israel and Gaza, and growing anti-Semitism. And because of their openness to, I think Jews in general, openness to novel mental health interventions, that they want to see what this is like in a group setting and in a Jewish setting. Most people have done psychedelics before who come to our retreats. So after my interview, they have a medical health screening with our team physician, a team physician, and then we go through a period of preparation. And this 2 week period, meeting as a group online, learning about ketamine, learning about the group experience, learning about each other and our intentions for being there, and also some aspect of Jewish mystical wisdom that can help orient us to the experience of expanded consciousness. Most mystical wisdom in our tradition, by and large, for the majority of Jews, is either very abstract. It's somehow like profoundly algebraic or mathematical. It's not intuitive or embodied. We're getting better at it. But if you open a book and try to read it, it's hard to make heads or tails out of it, maybe designed that way, without a living master. So giving people just enough about what it would mean to feel some expansion within consciousness, heart, spirit, soul, mind, and then how we would navigate in those moments, right? You have a big opening. Where do I find myself? Am I confused? Am I feeling rushes of energy? Am I seeing visions of my ancestors, memories of my past? That could be highly dysregulating and destabilizing. But our mystics have also given us kind of the steps, some steps toward returning to ourselves and returning toward the present. So that has been an exciting process. And then we have met for a full day where we have prepared ourselves. We have opened the ceremony and with beautiful music, playlist, and ritual, then having our direct experience with ketamine that's delivered by a medical professional. And then the ceremony lasts for about 2.5 hours where people have their experiences with the ketamine directly, with eye shades, lying down, supported by the music.
Ketamine is taken intravenously, so they're hooked up to IVs, or is there something else?
There's many different systems of delivery, methods of delivery. In our context, we have used intramuscular shots, injections. As my friend Lauren from Inbodied Life likes to say, right? It's an I am shot, intramuscular shot, but it's actually like I am, right? Getting back to the anochi of it all, the I amness of it. So trying to, even though it's like feels like a medical procedure, there is something that is still there's a spiritual aspect to it that we can focus on. But there are also intravenous infusions of ketamine, and people often can take ketamine lozenges, which are lower doses often. The bioavailability of ketamine orally is much lower. IM is kind of more moderate bioavailable, and then intravenous is most bioavailable, meaning you get the most ketamine out of it before it starts to be metabolized by the body. So after people get their shots, they have their experiences. They're in the tail doing meditation. People have been practicing meditation for the past 2 weeks in the preparation. So going back to meditation, going back to breathing and body sensations. And then when people have resolved, starting the integration process with eating, very Jewish, having a profound mystical experience and having a shared meal. So coming back to the body, feeding, nurturing, nourishing. And then some activities where we try to, whatever people have encountered or envisioned, remembered, that it's sometimes hard to hold on to the entire experience, but we can hold on to a few key phrases. My friend Justin Lubin from Perspective Wellness likes to call shift language. what's that shift language that you're bringing from that direct experience? All of the images, they might float away just like smoke, but there is some mantra, there is some prayer that you can leave with that you can then apply to your actions, your thoughts, and to the rest of your life. That could be, in some ways, like profoundly life altering. To say something like, I am unconditionally loved. What a simple phrase. But in every interaction with my own body, with my workflow, with my spouse, my children, my bank account, that I'm starting to think, I am unconditionally loved. How can I actually begin to believe that in a way that changes my thinking, uh, my despair, my joy, the way that I bring people together into my house. I am unconditionally loved. Okay, now what? So that's what we're working with. And then in the integration process, we give people an off ramp into other communities of practice, local synagogues, other organizations that are working in Jewish spiritual work, other psychedelic communities of practice. And it has been amazing. In one of these groups that I had, just it wasn't with psychedelics, but it was a teaching course. People are still meeting for Shabbat meals, still finding opportunities to come together for synagogue. Many months later, there is something about psychedelic work that people who are engaged in it together want to stay together. So we're trying to support that connectivity, especially at this moment.
So here's a couple of questions from a skeptic's perspective. Okay.
Please, love it.
So, which I am not, but there are. So
I
here's
am some of the time.
right. Judaism has embedded within it many rituals that create expanded states of consciousness, connection to the divine, opportunities for self-reflection, self-knowledge, be it fasting or davening or tikkun chatzot or on and on and on, all the festivals, right? Staying up all night for Shavuot, all these things are designed to create altered states of consciousness and not just that, but that's part of it, right? And through meditation, through davening, it is possible, from my experience personally, having tried it both ways, to get to these places of mochen gadlu, these wide, expansive mind sets and psychedelic type experiences
Mhm.
with no other products involved, right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, however, and sometimes years or decades to get there. Sometimes you get a free,
If
or
if at all.
if at all, right? And not that that's necessarily a goal, but it is possible to do it without. So the question is, coming out of these experiences, are people empowered with tools to make it more of a integrated organic part of their lives as opposed to, oh, I got to go do this thing again so I can have that experience, right? Does my question make sense?
It makes sense, yeah. And I'd say, there's this, that, and everything in between. Many people are doing many things. Some people have one experience and that is enough. Some people have to have a monthly check-in or a quarterly check-in with medicine. But this is, I would say, like, psychedelics are can be seen as medicine, but integration is a lifestyle, as my friend Ido Cohen likes to say. Um, so what I would say is that yes, there is a design to our traditions to evoke or catalyze shifts in consciousness, for sure. For people who were in an amazing setting for Yom Kippur, the fasting, wearing white, all of the singing at the end, screaming Adonai Hu Elohim, the Holy One, Yud He Vav He is the divine. There is none other. And then the shofar, right? That can be completely mind blowing. You're feeling like goosebumps. But for some people, there is an iron wall between themselves and their souls. There is so much that is deadening spiritually to our internal experience, the way that we were raised, our worries, our troubles, the ways that we think about ourselves, our self-conceptions, how much we identify with our thoughts as opposed to with our souls or with our bodies. And just as we would not besmirch someone who had some terrible illness and was seeking medical treatment, so too someone who wants to contact a part of themselves that seems out of reach, that these substances seem to, I think, in the right setting and with the right feeling of safety and vulnerability, harm reduction, right, all the good stuff, that someone could actually make contact with a part of themselves that has felt like it was under lock and key for so long. And as another one of my teachers likes to say, even the easy way is hard enough. That, yeah, there might be, this might be an efficient way to reach that. But you have one ketamine experience where, I'll speak for myself. I had one of my first ketamine experiences. I shrunk down to I don't know what size and was able to explore. There's a couple Sukkot ago already. All of the hidden dimensions of my sukkah that I couldn't see with my eyes, and then was visited by the Ushpizin, the holy ancestors, Moshe, Shimon Bar Yochai, Yitzchak Luria, the Baal Shem Tov, and Rabbi Nachman, all these spiritual masters in my sukkah, and they told me, "You're fine. You're doing great. Yeah,
Love it. I love it.
you're fine. You're doing great." And, that was my shift language from that experience. And whenever I feel self-doubt about my work, like, oh, they conferred upon me the blessing of "You're fine. You're doing great," and that is enough to keep me going. But it's not easy. I would say, maybe the framework is slightly different, is where maybe years of work of meditation or fasting or learning, right? All of the work is on the front end, and maybe you will see something after that work. Maybe there is grace, maybe there's luck, maybe there's blessing or toil. You might get results on the back end. Maybe with psychedelics and psychedelic spirituality in a good container, that all of the work is on the back end, right? You have the experience to start, which is the opening. But if you're doing it consciously, you're doing it with intention, that you're then living a life of trying to apply everything that you have learned and encountered or intuited. And that is a challenging process. So, like, where does the challenge lie and where is the experience? I think it's just kind of flipped.
Nice. That's a nice framing of that. Okay, so you talked about in your whole lead up preparing people through teaching meditation, etc., and then, Jewish music and then a meal afterwards. So that's kind of I'm thinking of maybe because I'm hungry, a bagel. That's the bagel and the the scrambled eggs in the middle are the experience. So what about the experience of ketamine in this example is Jewish at all? Or is it just the framing?
What about ketamine is Jewish? Well, call it a ketaminian. Yeah.
Do you call it ketamine?
I mean, not not on the website, but internally. It's internal language,
Okay, okay.
internal shorthand. Right? We see it as spiritual work in a group.
Hmm.
So that becomes right. There's a lot of Jewish literature, um, Hasidic, Kabbalistic literature about what it means to be in a group. We have primed people for the experience as it being coded Jewish, right? This is work that we are doing as Jews, looking with Jewish eyes, Jewish hearts together. So the intention is Jewish. The words that we use, the experience itself is supported by Jewish ritual, the creation of a makom kavana. right? This place where we have put all of our intention to, sometimes called an altar in other settings, where we've brought in our ancestors, our direct ancestors, our mythic ancestors, our soul ancestors. They're with us. They're there to guide us and protect us. So that feels like an incredible part of the Jewish setting. And whatever happens inside a person, um, right? Is there a Jewish psychedelic experience? I don't know yet. I'm not sure yet. I'm sure people have Jewish psychedelic experiences. If you look at our feedback and the trip journals, um, people's write-ups afterwards, people are having deeply personal experiences about themselves, their own incarnations. Um, some of it is very Jewish. Like there, I would say, thinking about one person in our last retreat, um, she was reaching out to Hashem, like she was asking Hashem to come into the moment, like reaching out, asking. Is that a Jewish experience? I mean, I would say yes for all sorts of reasons. But maybe someone who is troubled by how much effort she's putting into her daughter's bat mitzvah without a lot of gratitude from her 12-year-old, right? Is that a Jewish experience? Yeah, and feeling the pain of it, right? Feeling the loss and the divide between her and her offspring. Wow, feeling that as much as possible. Right. So I would say it's as diverse and pluralistic as we are, but it's kind of like what we do with it that is most significant. So, for the person reaching out to Hashem, I went over to her when she was resolved finally. She peeked out from the eye mask and said, Hashem has got this. Like, Hashem has got this. Amazing shift language. The woman with the bat mitzvah, it was a smash. You know, I talked to her after the bat mitzvah. She said, I was worrying so much and I felt all of the pain of all of the social family dynamics of what this was going to be like. And I was hoping in the moment for some relief, but on the back end, in the integration, like nothing really mattered as much as her just having a wonderful time. And I received that from the experience. So, um, it's as there is as many Jewish psychedelic experiences as there are drops of water in the ocean, but we're here to receive them. I think that that's maybe the most important part, is that it is culturally responsive, it's spiritually respectful, and that there is a shared language of experience where we're not trying to convince people like, oh no, 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 it's all one, right? Oh no, no, there's unity here. There's nothing different than that. We don't have an agenda other than holding what people are going through and knowing that there is a broad language, vocabulary, set of tools, and community that's there to nourish them if and when they want it.
Great. I love it. Okay. So I'm curious. I know you talk about trauma-informed settings, which is very important. And I'm wondering if people are using these modalities in Israel to deal with the PTSD. I know you're
Mhm.
talking about it here kind of generally, but talk a little bit about that if that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know that there is an incredible amount of work that is happening, I would say, above ground, underground, working with ketamine and soldiers, working with survivors of Nova. There are, I think, studies that have not, if they haven't already started, they will start for survivors with MDMA through MAPS Israel. Karen Sarfati is the leader of that, just doing studies to understand there's a war actually happening and how can we treat PTSD with MDMA. So there an Safeheart, an organization called Safeheart, which is also addressing not just psychedelic in psychedelic terms, the mental health needs of people who are who are going through ongoing trauma um, currently, and people are just kind of walking around with this everywhere. And there is also I'm trying to think of other places, but I know that several retreats um, in and outside of Israel working with medicine to help people. My concern always is, um, are we are we doing it in such a way where people are not being re-traumatized? I'm not sure. Um, but I think there's something about the fact that it starting at Nova, where so many people were on some type of substance, has really kind of impacted um, the Jewish and Israeli psychedelic scenes in this way, and kind of made um, things kind of much more obvious about the connections between healing and psychedelic medicine for Jewish trauma and Jewish grief.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine that I interviewed maybe 8 months ago who started this training for Israeli therapists to train them in 5 to 6 days about PTSD and how to become
Hmm.
specifically, they've been therapists for years, but it's a great
Hmm.
organization. So it'd be interesting to connect the dots there for
Yeah.
sure. Okay, so as we're wrapping up here, tell me, what is your vision for this work?
Mm. Well, most importantly, first we just need some real data. I've said like there's probably like about a million, maybe more, not clear. What are people doing? What are people actually doing? Yeah, people come to a Jewish organization as they type Judaism psychedelics and we pop up. But what about everyone else who's doing some mushrooms at a fish show or renting an Airbnb with their friends or had some ketamine infusions in Sedona and they had a memory of the Holocaust and they were a child of a survivor? So we want to really understand what is the state of play in the emerging Jewish psychedelic community. And so we are actually very soon launching a population study funded by the Jim Joseph Foundation called Jewish Journeys to understand the attitudes, the practices, and the needs of Jews towards psychedelics. And that's going to be really amazing because this will be the first time that any population, any religious, spiritual community will be focused on in this way. And we'll get some scientific findings, which will help inform Shefa and our own strategic decision making, but also the broader psychedelic field. This is going to show the specific needs of a particular community that researchers and therapeutic providers should be aware of. So that's really exciting. But I think more broadly, and this is dependent on legal settings, is that this already is a path in the Jewish spiritual tradition. This is happening. And my vision is for us to just be good stewards, but starting in a way that informs the rest of the pack. And that is a real emphasis on safety. There are about, I saw in a study just yesterday, about 8% of people who work with therapists have been abused or neglected in some way. That's not okay. Uh,
You're talking
they're
about in the relationship
in
with
the
the
relationship.
therapist?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
with the relationship. Yes, with therapists. These are powerful materials where people can become incredibly suggestible. We want to make sure that the Tselem Elohim, the divine image of each person, is guarded and kept safe from potential harm. We want to make sure that people's individual identities are really respected, that we're doing this with the least amount of dogma possible. My three things are: you are unconditionally loved, you are radically unique, and we're all in this together. Right? That's the dogma that I want to walk in to any psychedelic experience with. And finally, I see the potential for reawakening these traditions as live options. I was mentioning this idea that there's like this iron wall between us and our spirits, that we can, I think, revivify what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be a person of the Spirit, and to look at our traditions with fresh eyes and either to love them as they are or to update them based on our own direct experiences and these divine encounters when we have them. I don't think that there was ever supposed to be some time capsule where we put in Jewish mystical experience and just kind of dipped in. Like, let's make it new for right now, new maps of consciousness, new maps of reality based on who we are and the needs of our generation now. Certainly, we can do that without psychedelics, but I think there is also an efficient path toward this as well. So I'm excited about the future and what it means for me to be a Jew, inspired by Rabbi Nachman, whose yard site was just this past week, the fourth day of Sukkot. Being a Jew means bringing the world that is coming into the world that is. And it's happening whether we like it or not. So let's be ready for it.
I love it. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for your time. This was great.
Thank you, Saul.
If if you missed something, rewind the tape. There's a lot of what I call golden nuggets in this episode,
Holy
and
sparks, even.
a lot of holy sparks we've uncovered. And I always want to end with one final question, which is what I ask
Yeah.
every guest, which is, what does the Jewish world need now most, and why?
The Jewish world needs most right now is the belief that we are okay. We are okay. There is so much pain. There is so much confusion. There is terror all around, regardless of your orientation to the conflict happening in Israel and Gaza. And the feeling of being okay, even in the whirlwind, right? That we are the mountain and not the storm around it. I think is really important for anyone to hear, and that we have thousands of years of resilience, not just the trauma, but we have thousands of years of resilience. That is the reason that we are here in the first place, and that we need to tap into those things and not only focused on the wound. So we are okay, and it will be okay, but not just yet.
Oh man, I love it. Okay, well, I always want to end with a blessing. And Rabbi Zach, Hashem should bless you that the people that are seeking you should find you, and that those that feel that there's an iron wall between them and something in their soul or their Jewish life or Jewish practice should, if it's a good fit, find you and your communities and be able to break through so that they can live this embodied Jewish life, which is this incredible yummy treasure chest of experience and vibrancy that's available to all of us, but sometimes hard to access through a variety of ways. So, for the people that feel called to do it through what you're doing with your organization and beyond, they should find you easily. And not only that, but coming out of that, they should have this integrated experience of the Jewish life that has been waiting for them, or their connection to their own heart or their soul, or whatever it is that they need, that I believe Hashem gives us all dreams and all visions, and sometimes our own source blocks them. And however you can unblock that for people, it's an incredible blessing. So Hashem should continue to bless you in that work, and we should provide more healing and most of all peace and this feeling of being okay in the storms, because they're going to keep coming. And we have thousands of years of evidence that we've been through this over and over and over and over again. And here we are. If you're hearing this and listening to this, you've already made it through. So, with that, I will say thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
and we'll see you on the next episode.